boom, 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 boom. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quarantine Collective's ongoing reading of Klossowski's Nietzsche and the Vicious Circle. We're picking up from where we were last night. Apologies for being a bit late. Operation Inflation calls when it calls. So it's been a weird few days. Mostly just going to jump right into the fucking thing. Unless anyone has a thing they want me to go back over, anyone who's here, which I've got no chatters. I don't think anyone's talked. No one's typed a thing. Marcella said a few words. I think that's about it, which is perfectly fine. I don't want to demand more from everyone than that. I'm fine with that. Because it's mostly just me reading and rambling about a book I love. Last week, we went over, as Klossowski kind of ran through how the eternal return works, I think might be the phrase I'd use, like how it operates, how it becomes the supreme thought. And he actually, in an extremely practical way, lays out step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just pop, just runs through it. So I want to go a little bit through those and then continue with the reading as we were. As always, type in the chat if you've got a thing. Type in the chat if you don't got a thing. Say hello, all the fun stuff. Otherwise, we'll just kind of get into it. Just get into it. I had us back here. All right. So he's saying here, how can the tonality of the soul become the supreme thought? 1, the tonality of the soul. I need to switch over to the actual reading. How terrible is that? Boop, boop, and boop. There we go. The tonality of the soul, 1, is a fluctuation of intensity. When we talk about fluctuation or the flux, you're going to hear this term in a lot of other thinkers who are related to Klossowski, and you'll hear me use this a ton. But here, the tonality, the attunement is an inherently fluctuating intensity. It is not a stable state. It is not a stable line. It is not a single point. It is not any of those things. It is continuously variant. The tonality of the soul is a fluctuation of intensity that is constantly fluctuating. This is really important. Soul here is a really interesting word. This is pulling from Nietzsche. Nietzsche uses this word ironically a lot in his writings. He doesn't mean soul, like in the Christian sense. He's kind of playing with that, but he's doing so to try to deliver it somewhere else. And Klossowski's running with that. Klossowski really likes the religious imagery as part of this. But that's not what we're driving at. It's the tonality of the soul is first a fluctuation of intensity. 2, in order for it to be communicable, the tonality of the soul, the fluctuation of intensity, the intensity must take itself as an object and thus turn back on itself. Communicability, the way we talk, the way you understand things, the way you communicate, even with yourself at all, requires a thing being an object, requires objectification. There is, because of this, a fundamental split between what we would call the intensive experience and the representation thereof. So he says, in order for the tonality of the soul fluctuation, for it to be communicable, for the intensity to be communicable, it must take itself as an object and thus turn back on itself, fall back on itself, you might say. There's a reflexivity that is a condition of signification. This is the beginning of a semiotic structure that Klossowski is going to be laying out for us that is exceptionally unique and very important, but stands in contrast to other semiotic theory where the signifier or the sign or the master signifier comes first. That's not what's happening here. Those don't exist until after the intensity, to understand itself, turns back on itself, right? So there's this reflexivity that happens, and this object-subject structure that Nietzsche is looking to overcome is sort of created in this. This is the phrase he used before, the aporia at the heart of the reading, right? Consciousness is necessarily falsification. It has to be. The intensity can't take the intensity until the intensity is turned into an object. So that fluctuation has to become an object, a thing, a stable-ish identity of sorts to be talked about. This intensity can't be a pure flux and be communicable. Those things don't work on the same register. It's not how it operates. They're different. It's different shit, right? It's just different shit. So there's a betrayal of intensity that happens here by intensity itself reacting to intensity. This is a processual argument very flatly, but it's kind of the idea. It's if we go back, remember we had the letter from Overbeck at the beginning of this section. He talks about how consciousness developed only under pressure of the need for communication. He says this in The Gay Science, that consciousness as surface phenomena because of herd necessity. This idea for Nietzsche is that the intensities exist and the communication, the social, the secondary step, the taking oneself as something. The object has to be created for the subject to speak of it. The intensities do this. So he says, then 3. So we got first, remember, this flux of intensity, eternally fluctuating whatever, needs to, at some point, become communicable. In order to be communicable, takes itself as object, reacts to itself as stable, falls back on itself, you might say. And this turn back on itself is the beginning of that sort of tension of object-subject. In turning back on itself, the intensity interprets itself. But how can it interpret itself? By becoming counterweight to itself. For this, the intensity must divide, must separate from itself and come back together. So, if it is reacting to itself and interpreting itself, it must be divided from itself. A thing can't look at itself. So intensity becomes both interpreter and interpreted, but not at once. Division. It's a counterweight, an opposition, right? This is almost Hegelian in the way that he's talking about this, right? This is not a dialectical synthesis. It's a counterweight. A counterweight. So this division and return, he talked of a moment ago as this wave motion that doesn't resolve into a higher unity, but instead maintains its own sort of reflexive stability as you see waves against each other, right? It becomes metastable, the waves, as they sort of collide. Right? Is this making sense so far? No one said anything, so I hope it is. And it's important here when you talk about it that we don't get confused about the idea of there being pre-existing meaning, right? When we interpret things, when the intensity falls back on itself, when it reflects itself, becomes a counterweight, and it's not looking for a pre-existing meaning. It's not discovering a pre-existing meaning. It is constituting meaning itself through this division. So this is ontological Nietzscheism, right? There is no thing in itself that exists except with interpretations. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I'd phrase that.
This is remind me of the section in chapter 1, the subject and the enjoyment, right? Where there's like this kind of circular, like this circulation that, like Deleuze described it, specifically, roughly like subject at the periphery of the machine itself, right? Or machine, or whether the desiring machine, or because like arguably desiring machine and social machine are the same thing, but like at the periphery there's a circular movement, right? intensity, right? And this intensity is kind of like is it the Newman, or is it within the Socius? No. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
this is not going to map 1-to-1 to Deleuze, but if we're talking about the general spacing, you're talking about the connection and disconnection and the sensational
Exactly.
interactions. So as the sensational interactions happen and intensities exist on the BWO, that's what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
Deleuze and Guattari take it a step further by talking about what creates intensities, which is the connection and disconnection of partial objects via desiring machines. Those intensities, as they're produced and as they sort of reflect off each other and move around and all that and are recorded, which is what Klossowski is going through. This is the activity of the BWO, more or less, that he's going through here.
Yeah. This intensity is created by itself and interpreted by itself, right? But this intensity is kind of like does this intensity also create something, produce something like the body without organ, or it produced something, right? It produced at least produce, right? Because it wouldn't make sense if it not produce, right? To produce something, even if it's anti-productive, right? Because even if it's anti-productive, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a second part to this, though, which I was about to get to, because this is only the first part of part 3. Okay, so to go back, we just read through. The first part of part 3 is, in turning back on itself, the intensity interprets itself by by dividing, by separating from itself and coming back together. This is not, Hegelian dialectical synthesis. This is division, separation, then returning together. Okay, like waves crashing into each other, as he says. And then he continues, and it's kind of super important. Now, this is what happens to the intensity in what could be called moments of rise and fall. However, it is always the same fluctuation, a wave, an onde, in the concrete sense. We might note in passing the importance of the spectacle of sea waves in Nietzsche's contemplations. So, the wave is, as he's talking about here, a very concrete, very intentionally physical model. Just as with Deleuze and his work, there's not metaphors here. They're talking about things. They're being very specific. This is not poetry. This is not allegory. This is the thing. And so with this, the concrete model of this intensive fluctuation or series of them is a literal description of how intensity operates. Waves, rise and fall. Rises and falling are not oppositional states. You wouldn't say that a wave that like 50 hertz falling down to 20 hertz. Oh, 20 is the opposite of 50. No, that's not how it's not how it works. There's fluctuations. This is the fluctuations aren't oppositional. They're rising and falling. They're continuous undulations, and they're all of the stuff. This is all the intensities of things. So with his actual talks of the Mediterranean and the way the waves worked, which Nietzsche wrote about fairly extensively, but also how we can talk about wave mechanics as a thing, and we can talk about this scientifically, or again, I waste a lot of time doing modular synth bullshit, which isn't far from the same stuff. Is waves and interference patterns and all this inform kind of this setup. Waves don't oppose, they superpose. They cancel each other out. They reinforce each other. They don't have a stable substrate of a thing. A wave isn't a thing. Like, even if you're looking at it, even if you've got the fucking oscilloscope going and you're like, oh, look at the wave, it's not a thing. You're looking at a representation of some other, like you're looking at a measurement of some other thing. It's not the thing. Not the thing. It's still returned against itself. Eternally, this is going to be what's happening. And so there's this complete shift into a totality of a process ontology that's happening here. This is a completely different beast. than I think what came before it, but also I think what Klossowski and Deleuze and others were sort of up against at the time. So that's 3. With 4, they make a different move. And Caleb, let me know if I did fix. You were coming in pretty hot, Marcellus. That's on my end. So let me know if it was too much, Caleb. I think I fixed it a little bit towards the end there. Number 4, and I'm going to be breaking it up. But does an interpretation presuppose the search for a signification? Rise and fall. These are designations, nothing else. Big deal. Again, when we're talking about meaning, we're talking about where meaning shows up and how it comes to be. We're not talking about signification even still. We're not at that point. We're talking about designation. I like to use the term the indices of things. It's the designation of a point. It doesn't imply or have semantic depth. It is an indice. It's a designation. It doesn't have any reference outside of itself. So with this, it's a big deal. Interpretation through all of Klossowski's work kind of carries through this, but in this case, this is not about uncovering hidden meaning. This is the thing. It is the event of designation itself that is happening here. The rise and fall are simply intensive states. That's all that is. So like if you compare it, for example, to Wittgenstein, right? Who talks about seeing as, like the duck rabbit shit, right? If you haven't seen the duck rabbit illusion thing. Seeing as doesn't discover what's really there, but instead it's a sort of organizational process of development. But for Nietzsche, it's not really that either. Not for Klossowski, certainly. There's no stable referent beneath any of this. It's only more forces and more designations. Big pile of designations and indices as you go through it. So he says, is there any signification beyond this observation of rise and fall? We kind of answered that already. Intensity never has any meaning other than that of being an intensity. In itself, the intensity seems to have no meaning. There you go. It's fairly crisp. There's no telos, no expression that's happening through things. This is an incredibly different sort of minimalist position to take. It's all indices. Intensities have no meaning themselves. Red Rebel says, but is the counterweight countering the wave flux of intensity? Does it rise and fall counter the intensity? I'm picturing it right. The countering is a really interesting phrasing. Because when we're talking about counterweight, it's more opposition, but it's not opposition in the synthesis through like the Hegelian method. It's a division and return. So it's, think of the wave splitting to see itself and then coming back together. The wave motion doesn't resolve into a higher unity. It is sort of of itself referencing itself, recognizing its own intensity and then closing it off. It's the interpreter of its own intensity. It'd probably be how I'd phrase that. That's a tougher one, though. Yeah, let me think about that for a minute. I'll come back to it. Once we get through all of these, I'll come back to it. Yeah. I'll have to come back to it. I'll have to think through it. As we go through this, I'll be thinking about it. So he says, what is meaning? How can it be constituted? What is the agent of meaning? An agent, and even the translator, Dan Smith, good job, Dan, always puts in these little notes. Hey, By the way, he means agent. He says agent, which has a very specific meaning in French. He's not taking agence or anything else that sort of is around it. He's being very clear. He means this word. And it's like, this is like a metaphysical shift, because it's not what is meaning, right? But instead, how is meaning made? What is meaning? How can it be constituted? What is the agent of meaning? He's setting it up here. Again, agent, not as subjective subject as a thing, like what, not you as an agent or something that is agency, but as force, active force, the agent of, not you as agency, right? It's an important sort of distinction when we talk about agent versus agency. And he goes on, he says, in 5, the agent of meaning, and thus of signification, once again seems to be, it's a shock, I know, intensity, depending on its various fluctuations. So again, intensity is the division is the thing itself, then the division from the thing recognizing itself, but also the agent of meaning. It is not that there is a subject that has intensities. This is one of the things that a lot of people get very wrong about Deleuze, but certainly wrong about Klossowski in this text. We went over the essential salts thing, and it was a lot. There's no agency. This is not what's happening here. There's no subject at the base of it for Klossowski. It's not what he's driving at. Instead, it's actually that there is intensive becoming itself that's producing signification through the flux itself. I'm trying to picture how close in terms of speed it is able to reference interpret. It is constant and total and all the fucking time. It's imminently happening constantly. And not just one force or intensity, all of them. The itchiness of your butthole, the need to shit, which isn't really a need to shit, the nerves around all of that teach you need to shit, that you've collected into a specific directed meaning. But all of those things are various intensities. If you ever have a hemorrhoid, you know fucking what I'm talking about. Your finger, your nose, all of the nerves around that, the air pressure as you're sensing it, all the forces and intensities that make up your lived experience are doing this constantly and have been doing it your whole life, and it layers on itself in time. This is not something that just started happening 20 minutes ago or just right now. You are the product of all of the intensities. We'll get to this, but this is kind of, you're in this. This is you're downstream, you might say, in time. And that's what he's like driving at. It's not, I think, therefore I am. I think I said this last week because I just love talking about Descartes, which Nietzsche also does like talking about Descartes differently. But this isn't, I think, therefore I am. It is intensities intensify and signs emerge. Yes. It thinks, which again, that's Nietzsche's phrasing. It thinks. There's a reason that Freud, we in English use the word id because we like to have it grammatically separate from the word it for some reason, but it is the word it. It's it. And Deleuze and Guattari open up Anti-Oedipus by saying, what a mistake to have ever said the it. Because it's not the it. It's it. It thinks. It thinks. It's not I think. Beyond Good and Evil, he has that statement. Nietzsche's great. You should read Nietzsche. He's pretty awesome. But he goes on a bit here. If intensity by itself has no meaning, other than that of being an intensity, how can it be an agent of signification, or be signified as this or that tonality of the soul? We asked above how it could interpret itself. We answered that in its rising and fallings. It had to act as a counterweight. But this is nothing more than simple observation. How then does it acquire meaning? And how is meaning constituted in the intensity? Precisely by turning back on itself, even in a new fluctuation. By turning back on itself, by repeating and, as it were, imitating itself It becomes a sign. Okay. My little nephew was with us at a climbing rope swing park on some scary ride is alternating between laughing and trying crying and fear, no in between. It's I have kids, and it's really fascinating to watch it happen. It's understanding all of the intensities of thrill, and then having the signification of what that means emerge and be named. But it's not that he learned that he was thrilled. Thrill emerged from these intensities. You could actually emerge. And that's kind of what he's saying, because it's this other thing again. So it's the intensity divides, falls back on itself in order to recognize itself, becomes counter agent, basically counter thing, counterweight, Brooks. Use the right fucking word. Don't get lazy, stupid. I'm sorry. Becomes counterweight, but then continues. But again, there's all of these happening at the same time. And then there's this weird thing that happens where, again, it turns back on itself, repeating that thing, imitating itself, creating a new intensity. This new intensity, by repeating, by imitating, by faking it, becomes a sign. Intensity mimes itself. It produces traces. It produces signs through the repetition of intensity and then the repetition copying it. This is not a copy of an ideal. It's not what we're talking about. This isn't some teleological or tautological or transcendent bullshit. This is differential repetition. This is Deleuze shit, hardcore Deleuze shit. Like, said better, I think, honestly. I'm really loving Klossowski. But this would be creating simulacra without an original. Because there's no original that it's copying. It's kind of an emergent copy of things. The sign, the copy, the simulacra, whatever, emerges from the intensive self-difference of all of these things. Yeah. That's how I'd phrase it. Intensity is fire or is intention? Intensity is a degree of something. It's intensities. So when you think of another phrasing I really like that Klossowski uses is impulses. Because these are not, don't think of things you want or things you experience. Think of the weird things that sort of drive you to, like an itch. Like an itch. What's the intensity of an itch? Like, that's like as a simple version of this. If you got an itch, is it really bad? Really? How do you judge it? Well, it actually goes through the process. It emerges, and then it, as a counterweight, signifies and develops it. That's how you know it's a really bad itch or something worth scratching or just a little tickle or whatever it may be. And these things get named because of their repetition in time, over time, becoming copies of themselves and then sending off the intensity that creates the copy. And so when we talk about intensities, this is one of the reasons. It's a degree of something. It's a thing that can't be halved. You can't cut temperature in half. I know we say we can, but that's not really what we're doing when we cut it in half. It's not like we have 200-degree things of water. We have 50 degrees of water, which is actually significantly different. It's actually complicated as fuck to even talk about, is that half as hot? Well, what does that mean? Is there half as much movement? Not really. It's actually really more complex than that. And it's not really twice as much movement to be twice. It's different. It works differently than that. It's intensities. So yes, it's not intention. Intention's post subject. This exists way before you even have the illusion of yourself. And you're not kind of dumb. It's exactly the kind of question to be asking. So the intensities, all of them going, fall back on themselves, counterweight themselves, and then with that, generate another intensity that becomes the sign, which is kind of a copy of the division and the recognition, but it's not the original intensity. And that then becomes the sign that we use to understand that first thing over time and repetition, the repetition being primary, the repetition being the thing. Repetition becomes primary to everything. Identity, what we understand things of, is derivative of what's repeated. It's like a field in physics, gravity. It is. I mean, there's a reason we use the term flux, and the reason Deleuze does, and the reason that, all these thinkers have, is they were around when a lot of what we understand now as quantum theory was being proposed. But you're talking about like magnetic flux. What's a magnetic field? How does a magnet work? You can't divide a magnet in half, and you can't really say, oh, that's where the magnet is, because that's not a thing. Like we have the object, sure, but that's the magnetic pole. That doesn't work, because if I cut it in half, they're both magnetic poles now. So what the fuck? They have less strength. Oh, see, now intensity drops. So this changes the conversation as we sort of how we understand these things or how we talk. It's not that we are a stable singular thing. It's that the fluctuation falls back on itself, divides, and again, in time. This is not, to say again, this is not a thing that just happened yesterday to you. This is the eternity of existence and experience since before you were even aware of it. Like, I knew you in the womb kind of shit. This is all of that stimulation and response, whatever you want to call it, but this is the intensities of experience falling back on each other and falling back on each other and being recognized and then being divided and then coming out as they do, producing the sign. But the sign is, first of all, the trace of a fluctuation of intensity. If a sign retains its meaning, it is because the degree of intensity coincides with it. It signifies only through a new afflux of intensity, which, in a certain manner, joins up with its trace, its first trace. Trace is such a fascinating word to have it used here. It's in the original French. This way predates Derrida's use of it, so it's kind of cool to see it somewhere. It's always fascinating to see where, for me, I like seeing like, oh, fuck. Trace? Wait, when did Derrida write about it? He's got a bit to go. It's pretty cool. The fluctuation, the flux, leaves a trace that persists after the intensity has passed. Almost, you could say, recorded on some surface. There's a temporal disjunction that exists between event and signification. And that trace in time exists, and exists over time and through time. And it's happening all the time. And all of these little traces end up building up into something. Signification arrives late, always. The trace beats it. The sign always represents something gone, no longer here, not present. A memory, you might say. A recording of sorts, you might say. Particular scene of Sailor Moon that always blows my mind clear when I reach the peak of meditation session. That is fucking fantastic, Queen of Swords. Sorry, that's fantastic, Queen of Swords. That's fantastic. Go for it.
This is kind of like the indifferent repetition. Like there's the habit and memory. There's the third synthesis, right?
Yes.
The memory is kind of like Deleuze talking about when he talk about Nietzsche. He talk about like the distinction, a Freudian distinction of trace between like Nietzsche and Freud, and like a trace is interesting word because this recording, right, that you mentioned, right? Because I read it in Anti-Oedipus, right? This recording is within the social production and desire production, right? That is, but like this is like a synthesis, right? This is like we are in the domain of synthesis. of conjunctive and connective syntheses. I think that intensity, and that's my speculation, I think that intensities are these connective syntheses, or I think signs are the connective syntheses, which are both. Does connective syntheses are these signs, or I'm kind of going, ahead of myself. Like, I don't know. Is these signs are the connective syntheses that kind of end up pulling back on the recording of
So
the
it's
body without
so again,
organ?
it doesn't map one to one because they're not talking about the same thing. They're working in different registers at this point. Anti-Oedipus is focused on the entirety of desire and how it merges into the social field and how the social field plays back on it. We're just here talking about after the intensities exist, which is post the first syntheses, and before the subject does, which is before the third syntheses. So if we were to include it, this is expanding out everything in the second. Because the disconnection, okay,
Yeah.
the disconnection, the separation of the intensity and the recognition of itself that creates a trace that then exists in time, but that sign then needs further afflux to refill it as it makes its way forward, is literally how they talk about the second syntheses. So,
Which is the synthesis of memory, right?
It is the synthesis of recording. Recording. You can say memory,
yeah,
but it's not quite memory. It's in Bergsonian sense it is,
Yeah.
but not in the way like, oh, I remember this event, but in the way that you gather and over time have the billions of minute reactions to the world, the recordings of that become you, that surface, that thing. For example, I don't know, the model of the thing that you keep returning to that you are aware of, how it gets developed and how it's made and how we do forget it, that kind of becomes the thing. And that's this last bit, because this is again where we also see anti-production, the lack produced, because that's 7. But a sign is not only the trace of a fluctuation, it can also mark an absence of intensity. And here, too, a new afflux is necessary, if only to signify this absence. This means that to recognize there's nothing there, we still have to recognize that there's nothing there. There's a scene in Westworld. The TV show, first season, fantastic one, where he goes, you can walk through that door, and he goes, what door? Because he doesn't see it. He doesn't say a door is missing. He just is, there's no door. What the fuck are you talking about? Because it's not a negation. He's not saying there is no door. He just doesn't see it. There's a difference. And it is so important to understand the difference between not seeing it or actively seeing a lack. When we talk about something missing, we are saying we see negative space. When we don't see negative space, it's not missing. It's not an again, this is one of those things. We create the understanding of it through the afflux that signifies the absence itself. Always, everything is built out of intensities. There is no negation at base. There is no identity at base. It is 100% processual. Which is one of the reasons this kind of shit stands against so many thinkers, is identity doesn't come first. It's way down the line. Way fucking down the line. So that's the 7. Okay? That's the 7. Any notes, any thoughts here, anything going on? Because I kind of want to get into and talk about a little bit of the weird paradox of the self-reflection that Klossowski brings up here, because that's kind of what, and I don't know if they decided to stay, but Ralderable, trying to picture how close in terms, able to reference, interpret the intensity is. Is it instance? Perhaps how we experience our own reflection in the mirror. When we're talking about these things, the way the counterweight, countering the wave flux of intensity, does it rise and fall counter to the intensity? It's not a recent problem. One sec, getting a text message. You get to handle me coming back in about 2 fucking minutes, if you don't mind. Apologies, but I will be right back. Well, actually, I'll just drop this, and you guys can talk in Discord, but you're live still on YouTube. You need me to lay out? Let's go, girl. Come on. Come on. Fearless Leader returns. Don't worry. Don't worry. I wouldn't leave you just with the text. And did anyone say anything? No, not really. Oh. Throw a party. Good. Sorry, I had to run outside. A little winded. I am old and out of shape. It's excellent. Okay. One of the challenges of self-consciousness, when you think about it for just a moment, this is Spinoza talks about it. Aristotle talks about this. Thinking. You can do that. You can think about thinking. We're doing it right now. We're thinking about thinking. That's weird. If you take 2 seconds, you'll go, wait, how can we do that? How can we actually interpret ourselves? How does that even act? It would require that I'm thinking about myself thinking, and I can do that. You can reflect on yourself thinking about this gets weird, and you can expand it. You can go really weird with it. Do the right drugs. You can go really fucking weird with it. But this thing is like its baseline to an extraordinary number of philosophers and their major writings. This is Aristotle to Hegel to Fichte to fucking Spinoza to Kant, like whatever it is. But Fichte, for example, as an example, who is not, I would say, in line with these guys, the self gets identity through his phrase for it is weird, but it's self-positing. Having the idea of oneself, you gain that. But for Klossowski, we actually never achieve identity. It's only this division and return. The division and return we're talking about is where intensity turns back on itself. It becomes aware of itself. But it doesn't stop being an intensity. It still is an intensity, but now it's an intensity aware of it. Like there's a feeling, you have a feeling. That's fucked up. Now that you have that feeling that you have a feeling, or the intensity of an intensity, that self-interpretation requires a split. It just does. But it doesn't split into subject-object. It is the intensity itself. This is not about having a stable self reflecting on itself. Instead, the intensity is the thing reflecting back to itself. Way before we get there. You watched a guy obsessively map 8 steps of self-observation. You can watch, there are people who have severe mental problems. You can see it in AI subs these days. Like you go to AI subreddits or blogs, you will see people not really aware that they're doing it, and they just dive deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, what we're talking about here, though, is the reason Klossowski's bringing this up is this is like core Nietzschean shit. Like, The whole thing he talks about in the gay science, and it's throughout the gay science, is the idea of like, hey, consciousness, how does it operate? Is it secondary? Is it primary? Is it surface? If consciousness is secondary, but also surface, but also falsifying, which it seems to be, he goes through this in gay science, how does it arise from these unconscious drives? Because it seems to come from these drives. We have impulses that push us to do things, and then we justify them afterwards. A lot of people kind of generally get that idea. Igor says, kind of extra complicated meditation thing, more academic interpretation of guru stuff. No. I wouldn't agree there. For Nietzsche, we have herd origin. Is one of the ways he talks about it, that consciousness develops from the necessity of communication, that the impulses, if we never needed to communicate outwardly, we would never develop a self. There'd be no need. But the problem is this doesn't explain emergence. It explains necessity and why it is like selectively advantageous. This is, you'll hear a lot of people who are into Nietzsche. And it's a fair argument where we talk about, hey, the idea of thinking and intelligence and all this stuff, we value it because it valued survival. And this, because it privileged survival, we care about it. Happy day. Doesn't really explain the how, like the mechanism as a thing. And then he goes through the genealogy of morals. And he talks about how the way grammar, because he's a philologist. Remember, he's not a philosopher. He's a philologist, big on language and how language operates. The idea of grammar, the subject predicate, creates the fiction of a stable actor or center or subject behind deeds. But, as he says, this presupposes language pre-exists, like us. Like, what person without a subject would create language that had one that then necessitated a subject? Tough. It's tough to talk about things that way. Again, I have reasons to believe this does get solved, but I'm going through these step by step. And then beyond good and evil, he talks about how multiple drives interpret the world. These impulses, these intensities, they interpret the world, but the drives are unconscious. This is the body is you are a battlefield of intensities. You're a battlefield of forces, whatever he says. It's not really a thing itself. So these don't get solved by Nietzsche, not directly. Klossowski sees reading through all of these things a really different take on this, because how he's reading Nietzsche is through The Eternal Return and then through all of his secondary unpublished writings. And he says, let's take a opposition to like the Hegelian, the Fichtean, all these other things. I used to say fiction just to fuck with people who like Fichte. This is a different thing than the classic division, though, which I'm happy to go through if you want. I'm not big on Hegel. I'm not the expert. Go watch Sadler's half-hour Hegel. It's really great. But for Klossowski, counterweight is particular. There isn't determinate content. This is the intensity. The opposition or the counterweight as a thing, it's not really specific. Like counterweight doesn't mean perfect, right? It's not exacting because the other thing is just an intensity. It's not, what is the counterweight to hot? It's not cold. What the fuck does that even mean? That there's a lot of semiotic language when I say, well, the opposite of hot is cold. Like a child. What the fuck does hot mean? What does cold mean? What is the counterweight to these things? It's not that. These are purely intensive differences happening here. There's no qualitative determination that's happening in this. Not at this point, right? There's no progressive resolution as he makes his way through this. Oscillations continue indefinitely. There's no, oh, now it's done. Yay! We don't hit equilibrium. That's not how it ends. It's constant and never stopping. And because of that, there's no higher unity that these things can be a part of. There's no third thing that these two waves become that overcomes being a wave, right? Not to be directly Fichte, Hegel, or whatever, but that's not what we're talking about here when we talk about counterweight. It's not, oh yeah, no, this solves those two. So those, it's some third thing now. No, not really. It's not a higher unity happening. Instead, it's a pure relation, which is, you got to adjust your brain a bit to sort of grasp, but the counterweight isn't objective. It's a counterweight. It exists only in relation to the thing it's countering. It doesn't have a relation outside of that. There is no identity to it significant at all. There's no underlying truth or anything. It's a very different beast. If we were talking about something that was like more like Hegel's dialectics or Fichte's take on it or all that, then these intensities would be developing towards this complex consciousness, which is, again, how a lot of people take Deleuze too. And I've already seen a couple of people take that here, where it's like, oh, absolute knowing or understanding of the truth comes with this. And then we can tell truth from falsity. No, there's no telos. There's nothing transcendent, doesn't exist. It's not a progressive development. There is no final reconciliation in any of these writings. Consciousness remains perpetually belated and a falsification of intensive life. The civil war of the intensities never stops. Ever, 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 ever. So, with that, Nietzsche rejects all of these things, and Klossowski's sort of talking through that, but retains this insight, and Klossowski's really pulling it out, that opposition, pure relational opposition, not with content, but pure relational opposition, is itself productive. Deleuze specifically says this in Nietzschean philosophy. He states that Nietzsche's critique is not that Hegel has too much negativity, but that negativity is in service of ultimate positivity. That there is something it is in service of that is transcendent, a telos, a progressive unity, a totality. And we want a negativity without redemption, without that. And that's what Hegel, Deleuze, and Klossowski are offering here. It's a counterweight. It's a very different beast. And so, to understand this, when we talk about the waves, it's why he uses this phrase. It's why Klossowski leans on it. It's why I lean on it really heavily. Again, not metaphor. This is the model of things. Waves that are in water are not water waves moving. A wave doesn't move. If you haven't been in the ocean, and it's fair if you haven't, if you go out and you are floating on an inner tube, you don't move. The water stays where it is. If you're scuba diving, you can go do this. You can go under the waves. You don't really move. You might go forward and back a little, but the waves go continually towards shore. We see it as the waves going to shore. They don't. The waves don't move. Things don't move through water. It's a pattern of energy transfer we're recognizing due to the relation within the substrate itself. Individual water molecules kind of stay in one place for the most part. That's how waves work. And that's... Sorry?
It's kind of like the amino acid when Deleuze mentioned in anti-identities, like aggregates, like the aggregates, I guess.
Yes.
Right? The gregarious things.
The gregarious aggregates.
But they are independent, like they appear independent. Yeah, the gregarious aggregates. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The amino acids. He mentioned that
Well, and it's when we talk about one of the big reasons he does this is because when we talk about these things, when we talk about these things, when waves are hitting, and there's a lot of really cool shit you can do with waves. Go watch a couple of YouTube videos. Some people really show good stuff, but you can also do the same thing with putting a speaker up against a plastic tub of water, and you can put a speaker on one side and on the other and change the frequency of each one and watch what happens with the the rippling out, and it's fucking cool. It's just cool. I just so you know, it's fucking cool, and you can do really fun shit with that. But like, there's a really weird thing when they start canceling, because you can have standing waves, right? Where these things cancel each other out, so that way it's a seeming consistent pattern in there. But that's not, the water isn't in that shape. It's not a hill. That's not the value of things. You're not able to like reconstruct what waves are putting the water in that position. There's a billion options of what that could be doing. Like, there, you have no fucking idea. You can guess, you can probably get close, but there's no way to know when they cancel out and occupy the same space at the same time. The amplitudes just combine. That's it. That's constructive or deconstructive, or, you know, it could go up slightly, but that's because there's a bunch of constructive, but one huge deconstructive. Like, you can't tell. The interference patterns are incredibly complicated, and they don't really tell what's happening. They only show what's happening. That's probably saying wrong, but it's generally right, because we define these things not as a shape, even though we do, as we talk about, like we have square waves and other shit. What we're really talking about is like frequency, amplitude, and phase, right? Position in a cycle. These things together determine patterns that we're able to see in the waves. And then these things hitting each other determine the interference patterns. All of this applied to all of the intensities that are experienced by all the parts of you that are anything related to you in any capacity. All of this stuff comes together. And when we start talking about it, we say things like this traditional metaphysics, where everything is a particle, doesn't really work. Not really. Because not even particles don't really work that way. And again, I'm not getting into Zizek's dumb bullshit about quantum history, which, if you haven't seen that's the title of his book. I just want to know what happened to the two old sniffles. It hurts me. But instead, not particles, thinking of everything as waves and intensities. So when it turns back on itself, it's wave interference. The same field creating interference patterns with itself. And this appears as a thing, but it's actually destructive and constructive interference patterns of many intensities with apparent stability. It's more metastability, if you want to use the real term for it, and a dynamic flux that never stops underneath it. That's why it's really, really cool. Go ahead.
It's kind of similar to the molecular and the molecular aggregate and these kind of things, right? Where I don't know if that makes sense, but they're kind of like, you know, there's molecular and the aggregate gregarious things that, should we call these kind of intensities gregarious intensities, different kind of intensities, right? That reproduce themselves, right? Like interpret themselves, right? And at the same time, through fluctuation, right? But like this intensity, like it has like it produce signs, right? It produce, you know, signs. It kind of interpret itself and it produce signs, right? But like, you know, still kind of like, what is the origin of this intensity? Or I don't know, like, what's the origin of this intensity kind of? It is intensity qua intensity. Intensity qua intensity.
It's intensity is the production of the connection of design. I mean, again, in this, we're talking about just pure intent. We're talking about intensities being generated. He's not getting into what makes them, because that's a whole other discussion. And we will touch into it, I think, a little bit later. But again, that's here, the deal. Applying quantum mechanics metaphors to philosophy is useful when deployed with care and discretion. Yes. Sadly, it's Zizek. But look, and a lot of people will do that here. And a lot of people, and you can start talking about like particles versus waves, and you start hearing a lot of those echoes. We're not here to talk about that, though, because like quantum mechanics is not really what's applicable. The quantum mechanics requires an observer or measurement or some other thing. We're not having that discussion. That's not what we're doing here as a thing. Like, this is a very different thing where intensities are dealing with themselves and almost observing themselves. The intensities are the reaction to themselves. It's a very different beast. And again, this is where you start getting into where a lot of people find issues and run off where I don't run. Because if you talk about Nietzschean perspectivism, the epistemological claim basically becomes that, hey, we can only understand reality from a handful of positions or from our limited viewpoints, from our own perspective that is necessarily limited. I don't see any of this being what Nietzsche is saying, and neither does Klossowski. When you do, you go down the road of like the pragmatist Nietzsche or Rorty's take on Nietzsche, which I'm very much against, or, I mean, there's just a whole bunch. And each one introduces its own problems, because if you're going to start talking about like turning all this into this simple, it's a matter of perspective and we're limited in our ways. This keeps thing in itself, which is directly anti-Nietzschean entirely. Like, it's unable to know reality beyond perspective. So its thing in itself is preserved, which is not Nietzschean at all. It makes perspectives the properties of the subject rather than perspective as the constituting element, which is what Nietzsche talks about. And when Nietzsche makes the claim, there are no facts, only interpretations, how the fuck do you explain that? If it's from like traditionally how we talk about Nietzschean perspectivism? You can't, because Klossowski does it. I don't have anyone else I've seen do it as well. Klossowski says, and the quote is, "Interpretation doesn't discover pre-existing meaning, but constitutes meaning through division." This is a full-on ontological claim in Nietzsche's work. Interpretations don't represent reality. They are reality. When we talk and we do anti-Oedipus, we do Deleuze, a lot of people fuck this up. They think, oh, all the desire machines are telling me and building it up and creating meaning. And desire machines represent reality. No, they are. The real world is immediately apparent. That is what we're taking across the board. Interpretation is not a representational element. It is reality. There is no uninterpreted thing that exists. Facts are spin on things. The true world, right, doesn't exist. That's not a thing. Instead, everything is intensive forces that constitute what we call reality. That's what he's talking through here. The creation of the sign, the creation of the copy of this. These things are absolutely the fight of the thing in itself. Ding on seek. He fucking hates that. He really hates thing in itself stuff, even though a lot of people run with it because fucking why not as a thing? Who cares, right? Why read fucking Nietzsche ever? Who would want that? No one wants that, I guess. And that's how I would explain these 7. And then I want to get through the next 2 paragraphs, and that may be how we end up today, but we'll end up seeing how far we can get. Because this afflux is now what we're moving to. We're beyond the fluctuations. That's not the discussion we're having at all. He's laid that out. What the flux does, flux sees itself, recognizes itself, creates another flux, off goes the sign. And then the sign, as a trace of fluctuation, is not only that. It might also be a mark of intensity, because it is waiting for an afflux of intensity, a new afflux, because that trace of the prior experience or the prior intensity recognizing itself and leaving that trace, that little thing, happens a lot. Not once. We're not talking about 10 of these. We're talking about uncountable numbers of them that make up what you consider to be who you are in your life. That that large scale tracing. I used to use the example of there's the pen art where people put like 1 billion pens and then they take string and they run it through all of them, and you layer over certain things more, and then at a distance you start to see, oh, it's Barack Obama, oh, it's Donald Trump, because at some point you start to emerge and a shape takes hold. There's no picture of them there. You're seeing this as the layers are layering, as the contrast is contrasting, as these pieces are going, and you're seeing the negative, the positive, and you're putting that into that image. All of these things, this is the traces over time. But the traces are waiting for another afflux, a new afflux, which, as he says, in a certain manner, joins up with the first trace. But it can also signify an absence, which is also an afflux as well. And he goes on to say, whether we name this afflux attention, will, or memory, whether we name this reflux indifference, relaxation, or forgetting, it is always a question of the same intensity, no different from the moving waves of the incoming tide. You and I, Nietzsche said to them, we are of the same origin, the same race. He doesn't say the rest of the quote here, but it's good. It's good. The traditional psychological faculty of things, Aristotle through Kant to what I would say is modern cognitive science, talks about attention, will, and memory as like distinct capabilities, different mechanisms that make them up. Go read, they do this. And he's like, no, it's the same thing. You'd call it that. It's fine. I don't give a shit. Like, this is the same stuff. It doesn't matter. And the phrasing of this and the words he uses are really, really important. Because again, the French here is taken through, thank God. Afflux and reflux. This means a spurt. An afflux is a spurt. A reflux is a spurt. Acid reflux isn't just a flow of acid out of your mouth. That would be horrifying. It's indigestion. A big term for Nietzsche, by the way, as well. An afflux, same thing. It's a surge. It's a little burst of something, little fart, little afflux. That little thing there. These little things, afflux flows towards, reflux flowing back. Acid reflux, afflux, reflux, right? Right? These are not opposites. You can call them that. That's not what we're doing here. These are complementary phases of oscillation. Okay? Afflux, attention, will, memory. Reflux, indifference, relaxation, or, God damn it, forgetting. That's right. Dumbass. Brooks, you dumbass. Intensive gathering, afflux, right? Concentration, retention, willing, empowering. Forgetting, dispersal, releasing, dissolving, dissoluting. These things is what we see and have talked about as separate faculties or mechanisms with complex registers and everything. No, it's kind of just different registers for the same wave motion. The same wave motion. Not opposition, not different pieces, not different parts. The same wave. Whether it's flowing towards focus, movement towards focus, the attention, or away from it as indifference. Whether it's contracting into a determination, will, in Nietzsche's terms, or relaxes into passivity. Whether it retains traces, memory, Bergsonian style memory, or erases them. This is the same process. This is the same process. Same exact process. Is everyone following when I say that? Because I hope so. Super important. Same process. It's all the same process. There is no substantial difference. No substantial difference between remembering or forgetting. They're both the same operation. They're both intensive operations. Forgetting is not an absence of memory. It is an active process that requires forces, It requires intensity. It requires afflux, reflux. It requires power to happen. You don't just forget. It's not, oh, God, it just happened. No, it's active. This is a part of the process of things. Forgetting is not an absence of memory. Super, super important. And he goes on. No different from the moving waves of the incoming tide. This is not being cute. Again, that's not what Nietzsche or Klossowski really do. It's not making a metaphor here. This is absolutely stating that our internal life dynamics are ocean waves. There's no discrete state, only ongoing variation. Waves gather, they disperse, they alternate. There's no boundary to them. What moves is not substance, but intensive patterns. And there is no underlying substrate. Waves are not things. Water's a thing, but the waves move within the water. And it's actually patterns of movement that are moving, not waves. Right? So he says, you and I, Nietzsche said to them, we are of the same origin, the same race. This is very carefully, I'm going to say, because this is, you want to talk about things that you could take way the fuck out. This is, go read the original and just go, Deleuze actually quotes the full thing, which I appreciate, but Nietzsche's talking to waves. Like, he's talking to waves. He's talking to the fluctuations we're talking about, the intensive fluctuations. He is claiming kinship with waves. Human consciousness is not really observing waves as an external phenomena. It is wave motion observing itself. We are of the same origin, waves, intensities, you and I. We are of the same race, you and I. This is, again, genealogical, not historical. It's not saying we descend from waves in evolutionary lineage. That's not what, Nietzsche didn't do that shit. It's genealogy. It's not historicity. Okay? That's not what we're doing here. We are waves. We are waves. Your body, and as you move around, is waves. You're waves. Just like the ocean is not just waves. It's waves, but the waves don't. What's moving? Well, you have a big giant fucking surf area. Well, what the fuck? Is that what the water is? Well, not tomorrow. Well, you move your arm here and there. What the fuck's the difference? There isn't a difference. You and I. This is the point. He's not objectifying description. He's not saying waves are like consciousness. No, he's saying directly, you and I. He's speaking to them on their level. He's talking to them and acknowledging them as kin. That's why he has the words, we are of the same origin, you and I, the same race. It's fucking great. I really love that phrasing. I really love that phrasing.
Earlier when he said the German word Stimmung, right? Like Stimmung means like mood, right? Mm-hmm. Some kind of passion.
Yes.
Right? So it's kind of like when I equate like the movement of wave, the tiding, the reflex and the reflex, right? These intensities, right? These intensities, what constitute within, we are beyond consciousness, right? Beyond subjectivity. It's the dissolve. It's the what Deleuze call the dissolution of subjectivity between the death of God, right? Between the death of God. So, höchste Gefühl, which means the highest feeling, right? So
yes,
it's kind of moods. It's kind of that's what Nietzsche talk about, perspectivism. I guess
he's talking about the intensities. The intensities happening to, like, almost happenstance coming together, the highest feeling. He's not talking about it in the sense of, oh, it's the high feeling, I'm enlightened. He's not speaking, he's talking about the passions, the intensities coming together and producing
exactly.
this. Yeah, absolutely. Just like a tsunami. It's a tsunami. A tsunami is not the highest wave. That would be weird to say, but that's kind of what he's talking about.
Which means I will put him in the category of Hume, David Hume. Right? Passion, reason is utterly impotent in this particular, right? The famous quote by Hume. So I put him in like the place where Hume, right, which is emphasizing the idea of passion, reflex, and vivacity, what Hume called the vivacity.
Yes.
A word like sentiment to that.
And this is, so, one second, let me turn off draw mode here. And this is why when we make the move into the next little bit here, because I'm just going to move forward, because this is just fucking exactly what he's talking about as we move forward. I'm just going to read the next paragraph. This flux and this reflux will intermingle. Fluctuation within fluctuation. Like the figures that rise to the crest of a wave, leaving behind them only foamy froth. Such are the designations through which the intensity signifies itself, and this is what we call thought. But if, in natures as apparently limited and closed as our own, there still exists something open enough to make Nietzsche invoke the movement of waves, it is because, notwithstanding the sign in which the fluctuation of intensity culminates, the signification, because it exists only through an afflux, can never absolutely disengage itself from the moving chasms it masks. Every signification remains a function of chaos, out of which meaning is generated. This is such a fucking complicated paragraph, but it's incredibly important. It's so smartly said. There are so many paragraphs in this that are like, I don't pretend that I'm a great writer, but sometimes I read things and there's a lot in this book where I go, well, that's why I'm not that. Like, I can never write anything that fucking concise and brilliant. It's Adorno has is it Adorno in the Minima Moralia where he says something like, a person will write a book, a writer will write a chapter, a great writer will write a paragraph, but a poet will write a sentence. Something along those lines. I can't remember the exact wording, but I love that line. And this feels like it's so concise and so simple, but the complexity inside of it is not like waiting to be pulled out. It's there. He opens, this flux and this reflux will intermingle, fluctuating within fluctuation. It's so fucking, God damn it. Okay. This is not binary oscillation. The intermingling, we've been talking about, it's what we're talking about with the highest order feeling, all of that stuff, or standing waves or the ocean. All of these things intermingle. There's complex interference patterns happening here. This is not, opposition, go. This is not binary oscillation or an on-off switch at all. Continuous interweaving, creating nested rhythms at multiple scales of existence. And they're all interfering with each other. It's a fractal almost. Fluctuation within fluctuation is excessively fractal when you take a moment to think about it. You might have, for example, at the very largest scale, I'm going to speak simply, so forgive me, generally. But there's seasonal moods that at large, it's colder outside, rainy days. You like to give you a mood. It's seasonal. And then there's like meso scale, like it's 2:00 almost. And this is when I usually end on a Thursday. There's scales that repeat overall and the attention scale there. Then there's the moment to moment of me responding and talking and looking up and getting messages from people and trying to ignore and fucking Operation Inflation stuff posting, then my computer giving me errors and it's giving me headache, like all that shit. And then there's just like smaller scale than that. I'm mentally non-normative. I'm on medication. And so as such, the neural oscillations that are just in there, not really like all of these things have wave dynamics to them. They all have complex interference patterns. There is here an anticipation of this oscillation of circadian rhythms, all that stuff that people talk about in biological systems. This Nietzsche was very much talking about, but this is the thing. It's these rhythms, but it's rhythms of everything at the smallest and largest scales all coming together, and you almost being the expression of that. It's a completely different wave. It's one sentence. Sorry, it's just like one sentence. This fucking book is crazy. Like the figures that rise to the crest of a wave, leaving behind them only foamy froth, such are the designations through which the intensity signifies itself, and this is what we call thought. The figures, phrasing is really fucking important. Figure is not a thing that has meaning in itself. Just it's important phrasing. These figura that rise to wave crests are ephemeral stabilizations that we notice and we recognize in patterns, momentarily coherent. They're only because the moment a wave's passed, you don't recognize it anymore. Unless you took a photo. So it's gone. It's fucking gone. It's immediately dissipating. In fact, there isn't a moment where the wave is stable for fractions of moments. There's no way you can break time into small enough bits to go, see, look, the wave was exactly identical twice. It's not really how anything works at the smallest levels of things all the way up. And this produces, as he says, a foam, this weird threshold where these things crash back into each other, or where because that's what, if you haven't seen the ocean, creates waves, creates foam in a lot of different ways, that sort of shows up, that's visible, almost a signifier, right? But its intensive nature is lost to the process. What created the foam isn't there now, but the foam's there, right? So you can guess and you can go, oh, look, this is a frothy ass fucking area where the fucking everything's coming in and out. You don't have to see it. You can even look in between waves. You go, oh, this is a frothy ass area because it's frothy ass foam. It's a interface almost, right? This thing between at the boundary of where the edges of the water meet something else, where things come together, where intensity meets signification. These things appear and they're different. But they're foam. They're bubbles. God damn it, I'm going to have to go read more Sloterdijk after this, aren't I? Fuck. I feel like I'm going to have to read more Sloterdijk. I'm going to have to do that because he synthesizes Heidegger's foam. Oh, it's going to be interesting. Because like Heidegger talks about foam being is foam foam on the wave of fuck. I don't know my Heidi. I'm not a Nazi. What can I say? But he talks about it more as stable. That being is this ephemeral appearance on the surface of this dynamic ever becoming, which is not wildly off from what we're talking about here. Like that's kind of the thing. What seems the most real is actually just incredibly superficial secondary things, which is, thank you, Rumpel. There's a phrase for it. Heidi has, fuck. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the foam is not the wave, right? Like, I don't think anyone here would mistake foam for the wave. The foam on the wave is incredibly superficial, and the leave behinds and the interactions, because of the interference patterns of an extraordinary complex world. This is conscious. This is it. This is the thing we are. This is the signification. This is how all of these things emerge. This is what we call thought. It's fucking like a knife cutting out all the bullshit. It's beyond simple. It just hurts when someone writes so well. It's like, damn. Hey, we have all this foam pattern, this foamy froth. We have all this shit, this ephemeral designation of intensity. That's thought. This is thought. It's not rational cognition discovering truth, but it's foam patterns on intensive waves of experience. Conservatives look at the washed up foam on the tide going, wow, look at that wave. Well, that is getting a... if you didn't know, we have on the QC a little cool feature that if you put the little mask and a couple other people click there, click that little mask icon in the Discord if you're in there. We should have, it should be functioning. It does a little starboard thing because it's a best of. I think that's a great line. Clouds are thought. Got it. Pretty close. Actually, pretty close. And they're pretty close. This is what we call thought. That's the thing that he's driving at. Plato, Descartes, Hegel, Husserl, name it. It's a thing. The highest human capacity is thought. Kind of inverts that a little bit, you could say here. Kind of fucks with it. But this is not arguing for irrationalism. This isn't saying things are meaningless. Like, this is not that kind of nihilism. This is not saying thought is shit and we should be back to intuition or romantic feelings, whatever. There might be another YouTuber who was like, oh, Nietzsche is siding with the body and the intuition and the feelings. It's like, no, fucking way no. The foam patterns exist. Do you not think they exist? They're not the waves, but foam exists. Thought exists. It's necessary out of necessity. It's inevitable. We must think. We must create designations. We must stabilize intensities into concepts. It's not that we need to abandon thought, but that we should understand foam without the illusion over it. Yeah. This is Nietzsche talks about necessary errors, categories of reason that are false but indispensable for life. There's some really fun ones. We used to come up with some, chatting with a handful of people I really adore. There's this thing, if you've ever gotten into feng shui, it is a huge bullshit thing. Yeah, of course. Like, design your house so a dragon can turn around, like shit like that. Put the money in this corner, money tree in this corner. This is your prosperity corner. All that's stupid. But take 2 seconds. If you design a house so that a dragon can turn around, that's kind of actually ends up being some nice spacious areas. It opens up for conversation. It's not a closed off. It's actually a really great, simple rule of hand. And actually, most feng shui is actually kind of a really interesting, great, simple rule of hand. It's not saying the truth, but they're kind of good lies. There is good errors. They're not bad. It's just not the worst thing. You're doing okay. So keep that shit up. There's necessary errors. Thought is foam, but foam is a necessary interface between the chaos of the intensive and a livable existence. There's no reason to get rid of it. And they're not advocating for it at all. Zupanzik fucking nails this point. Oh, yes. Zupanchik. I will never be able to... I feel terrible. Because I've mispronounced her name literally forever. And someone corrected me on it finally, which is embarrassing after years of saying it the wrong way. And I can't, for some reason, I can't remember it. I think it's because without the accents above the C's, my brain just can't do it. I don't remember what language it is as I'm reading it. I don't know why. Because I'm stupid. I'm dumb. What can I say? But if in natures as apparently limited and closed as our own, there still exists something open enough to make Nietzsche invoke the movement of waves. It is because, notwithstanding the sign, in which this is a long ass, that's the entire rest of the sentence. That's the entire rest of the fucking thing. Okay. We're going to break it up. We're going to break this up. I'm going to have to break this up. I don't think I can do it otherwise. Nature's as apparently limited and closed as our own. Humanity has a finitude. We are bounded by skin, skull, your story, where you're born, your whatever. Like it, we are limited and closed in our experience, in our apperception of things. We have a weird, bounded, enslaved subjectivity. But as apparently limited and closed as our own, there's an opening there. That seeming, that apparent closure is an effect of signification stabilizing our identity. But don't worry. The intensive overflows in all directions. You might recognize that phrase from another book. Some of it, maybe.
Lines of flight.
Sorry?
I guess. Lines of flight.
Oh, no, it's literally Deleuze says desire overflows signification on all sides. Like Deleuze literally says, like the impulses overflow signification on all sides. It's one of Deleuze's and Guattari's and a whole host of writers. They all know actually the intensities overflow their signification because the signification can't possibly capture it. It's just not, it's not feasible. It's not going to be able to do that. Queen of Swords. Yep, I'm just not going to say things I 100%. These are great phrases. It's not the manipulation of physical energy, but the manipulation of psychic energy. It's just easier to think of ourselves as being in charge of our environment. Well, it's easier to think ourselves as thinking rather than being thought, that our thoughts being thought. Yeah. They continue. Something open enough to make Nietzsche invoke the movement of waves. There's something open enough that the self in the world has a porosity between it. We aren't sealed signifiers, right? We're wave patterns within a larger ocean of wave patterns. Nietzsche identifies with waves, calls them his kin, because there really isn't a barrier there. Everything is intensive becoming. We immoralists are wide open, beyond good and evil. Zarathustra's, I love the great despisers because they are the great reverers and arrows of longing for the other shore. The overman as one who overcomes bounded selfhood. Something open enough to make Nietzsche invoke the movement of waves, notwithstanding the sign in which the fluctuation of intensity culminates, because intensive fluctuation reaches its summit, its culmination in signs, right? The sign itself is the highest achievement of the self-interpretation process, the intensity dividing and seeing. It's the sign. But that masks the origin. Again, it's the foam, right? Foam is at the end of this. The intensity and all of that gets lost to the sign being created. The sign stabilizes. It makes it communicable, but it's falsifying the intensity and the flux that created it. It's a tragedy. It's tragic. It's a tragedy. The intensity's best thing is its concealing of its own nature and creating the illusion it doesn't exist. Yeah. So I'm going to go back. It is because, skip that part, the signification, because It exists only through an afflux, can never absolutely disengage itself from the moving chasms it masks. So, sign is the sign. Signification is a little bit more than that. Sign and signification, go read Saussure. My brain's not going to be able to do all of that today. I've been talking about Hegel, for fuck's sake. You have any idea how much that makes my brain melt itself? Signification requires intensive investment. It is ontologically dependent on intensive flux, even while it conceals it. Signs seem to have an autonomy. Seem is going to be really important here. Signs, fine, we'll go into this. Signs only ever relate to signs. There's not a signification there. They don't relate to things. Signs only relate to signs. They don't relate to anything else. But that idea of signs, how we understand them, is actually the illusion. When you pull back the intensive investments, signs become dead letters. It can't disengage itself. And the phrasing is really interesting because the moving chasms, I would be interested to know why Smith chose chasms here. Probably because it sounds better. Because you could say abysses. Abysses, for me, far more related to how Nietzsche talks about these things. But it is chasm. It is a boundless chasm. It isn't like a canyon. It is a chasm to an abyss. It is an abyss and a chasm. The phrase there, abysses, is abyss. But it's not like a stable abyss. This is not a static void. This is dynamic chaos. It's dynamic chaos. Under every stable meaning we have is this fucking abyss of chaos, of intensive fluxes that momentarily cohere to this meaning. The grounding is the chaos. Or you should say there is no grounding, except for the abyssal movements, aberrant movements, the chaosmosis. Yes, these things are all what these fuckers talk about. That's what these people fucking talk about. This is getting to New Age reflection territory, is the other way around. It's a completely different thing. You can start seeing, and there is, again, this is why a lot of people who touch into this stuff touch into tarot cards and other fucking astrological signs, which is cute and fun if it's cute and fun. But if you're really into it, you get into this new age weird dumb shit that they're not into. That's finding meaning elsewhere. It's also dumb shit. This is not the point for them. This is not the point for Klossowski. It's not the point for Deleuze. It's really not the point for Nietzsche, as we're reading it here today. If you go do your own fucking podcast, do whatever you want there. This is very different. They're actually giving us a completely different way of understanding how identity itself fundamentally comes about. Not how we deal with identity. Fundamentally, everything breaks down. This breaks that all down and tells you how to actually... Thank you, Queen of Swords, for saying it better than I did. Yes. But it's a fair, I get why people see this, and we'll get comments like that. And again, I get why people go that direction, because if you're really attached, it's the Bill Hicks line. Well, if I'm not real, then that means my bank account's not real. What am I going to do with all this money? Where are we going to send all these missiles if those guys aren't evil? Like, it's that kind of like it. If you have a lot of presumptions about your existence, it's going to be tougher. But this is about breaking all of that down. Like, there's not even tarot level meaning in this. There's none of that shit. There's no new age shit. It's much deeper. Fundamentally, it is the destruction of the ego in a way that I would argue is on the lines of the like greatest Buddhist prophets or Taoists. Like it's that kind of like extraordinary, divestment from egotism, understanding the world that way, and instead having a completely different direct relationship with everything. God damn it. You use the fucking word. Queen of Swords is like literally just sitting in my brain typing. It's very frustrating. God damn it. It's like literally I say a thing 2 seconds later, it pops up in chat, and then now it'll look like you said it first because of the delay. And fuck, I hate the internet. But we're talking about inverting Plato's cave. New Agers don't do that. New Agers love the true form of things and getting to the truth and enlightenment being the one total in the Hegelian sense, like all that shit. This is the opposite. What seems real for Plato depends on what seems less real. So the fire is less real than the shadows. But for Plato, you go outside and you can see there's like a sun outside the cave. Oh my, but it's only more intense darkness and chaos. No, the moving chasms are not shadows. They're shadows of the cave itself. The cave itself is a shadow. Like it's like fuck Plato. All of his shit's also the cave is a shadow of a shadow. Like it's all of it. See, and Quat's brilliant. I was thinking of Plato's cave shadows being the fluctuating intensities like 20 minutes ago. The timing is amazing. 92. Wonderful. Just amazing. But he continues, and it's the last line, and we'll end here. We'll take questions or anything. Every signification remains a function of chaos, out of which meaning is generated. Every meaning value is determined by chaotic input. There's the same chaos, but different functions, different interpretive operations yields different meanings. So intensity can generate multiple signs because even though it's the same chaos, it is chaos. There will be different functions, which are interpretive operations, which yield different meanings. But function also means operation here. Like he's very particular with his setup here. It's a function, an operation of chaos, because it's also kind of like the capacity of chaos. This is the role of chaos. Like chaos is self-manifestation. Chaos is not hidden in the signs. It is not in some depths that we don't have access to because we've got signification now. We can't access it anymore. No, actually, it is this thing. Chaos is not hidden. Signs are the appearance of chaos. Signs are the coming of chaos, the presence of it. It's such a good fucking line. Every signification remains a function of chaos out of which meaning is generated. So this is why like books or video games at some point or stories or films become unreadable or you lack the capacity to understand them for what they are. This is why languages die as they do, why cultural practices and cultural elements become opaque and not really embedded in the same way. That the intensive investment in these things withdraws. Signs become empty, dead. Philology, Nietzsche's entire practice, was an attempt to revive dead signs by reconstructing the lost context of them. This is what he did for so much of his earlier work. That's his thing. But they're reanimating corpses where the intensive life has fled. This is, by the way, this is one of the problems with capital. And so out of which this thing, meaning is generated. Chaos is not causal. This is production. This is genesis. This is birthing. This is not hylomorphism where a thing receives a form. This is not Aristotelian shit. Chaos is productive as a cause. It is productive cause. It is productive cause itself. It's actively generating meaning without itself becoming meaning. God damn. Yes. This is chaosmos. Logic of Sense Deleuze goes through this. I think it's really nice. Chaosmosis for Guattari and his work. But it's chaos cosmos. Chaos that generates order without ceasing to be chaotic. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I'd phrase that. It's so good. And you can get into this shit. Like, my notes on this stuff is like, this is just where it's like, because this, you can see the nihilism. And after watching the Essential Salt's awful videos on this book, it's so important to understand how people get to this weird nihilism that isn't in this. This is like not nihilistic at all. It's incredibly like open. It's wild.
Is there a book talk about Theosophy or osmosis, like in Logic of Sense? Like, in which chapter he kind of
I mean, for Logic of Sense, it's the entire book, because it's about, for him, the ontological genesis or the logical genesis, and it's always from chaos. It's always from heterogeny. And so for him, like how he's talking about it, he's speaking of chaos, but he's using very particular terms for it because he's talking about heterogeneity versus homogeneity, the way that a series forms and we find them and we develop them. But the entire thing is about chaos. As far as like, I mean, again, I'd say Anti-Oedipus 1000 Plateaus would be on the list for me. Because that's, again, it's about the chaos. Desire machines are chaos. They're chaotically connecting. They don't know anything. Desire is doing whatever it's doing. It doesn't fucking care about you. It doesn't understand you. It doesn't understand the world. That's not what desire or impulses are. They exist before you do. You are the product of their interference patterns. So it's about chaos. Absolutely. More explicitly, there's a couple essays in Desert Island. I think maybe the best book on it, if I had to say for Deleuze, would be not a Deleuze work, but actually La Poujad's Aberrant Movements, which is about that almost exclusively. There are PDFs of it. It's not a cheap book, but it's so good. Can you still take Aristotle seriously after this perspective clicks? Yes. Oh, certainly. You can take everything seriously after this clicks because it's all the intensity. It's all that. Essential Salt's dumbass videos, which I refer to as dumbass videos, are still that. They're still the intense. It's on its face, the thing. So am I. So is everything. Aristotle isn't like exempt from it. His ideas aren't exempt from it. It is still the thing. It is still chaos making itself. Everything is. It's very weird to consider, like, but it's easy to get because it's, again, it accounts for all of it. So it's fucking weird. Queen says the problem is not a concept you can grasp. It's true. You have to handle it with such care and its regress. It almost falls apart for thinking you have a handle on it. Yeah. Because it's not, there isn't an it. It's a process. And when you can understand when I say that there's no such thing as a wave, Deleuze's Logic of Sense, I think, to me, rereading it a few times, having the right people re-explain it, and then Mehdi Parsa's book on it, I think gives a really one of the better ways to go about it. But there's other books that do it very well. I like his conversation where he's like, hey, When we say Alice becomes larger or Alice becomes smaller, what does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean? Because there's no moment that Alice is actually becoming smaller. It only exists as a vector between 2 points in time. In any single moment, Alice is only ever that size. But we can say, and we understand very easily, that Alice becomes larger. Oh, my hand is getting bigger. Now, show me the frame my hand got bigger. One frame. Show me the frame of that video where my hand got bigger. Not 2 frames. Oh, you mean you have to use 2 frames? Yes, you do. Because in order for something to be bigger, it has to be bigger than it was, which means you have to consider what it was a moment ago. In order for it to become smaller, it needs to be smaller than it was a moment ago, which means you need to compare it to how big it was a moment ago. You have to have at minimum 2 hands or 2 Alices. And really it's 3 because you're talking about a midpoint between 2 is that she's going to be smaller than she was a moment ago where she was bigger. That means that at best, there's no such thing as a stable me, where I am anything. Alice never becomes larger. I never get smarter. I never say the right thing. I'm saying the right thing. A tree greens. It isn't green, though. That's not how it works. There are vibrations. There's time. There's all these things coming into making it green. And how we use language and how these things come together, this complexity, this is how we start to mistake. We think Alice becomes larger. Oh, because we understand it. We can think of it. We can consider it. Therefore, she is becoming larger, which makes no sense. But it does make sense. It makes sense to us. So we can see things as wave functions. And then over time, we develop this ontological or logical understanding of things. And these things go together. And yes, you also need a sense. You need to say these frames in this order. Otherwise, someone could show you 2 frames of my hand doing this. And you could say, look, well, Brick's hand was getting bigger. You put the frames in the wrong fucking order. Oh, you didn't tell me that. It's huge. And when you start getting into it, there's a great book that explains all of it that Daniel Smith translated properly, but it's The Fold. Because, yeah, there is a little bit of a manifold thing happening here. And it starts becoming how chaos actually is everything. Folding on itself, interfering with itself, creating these stability patterns we recognize. And by the way, the recognizing of those patterns, also patterns. That's all of it. That's it. There's nothing else. Literally, they just went through all of it. There's nothing else. That's ontologically everything. That's ontologically everything. Klossowski solved it all. There it is. It's the last, this paragraph kind of answers what everything is and why. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. They're not my Alice analogies. I'm stealing them directly from Series 1 in Logica Sense because it's just the best way to describe it. I could go over it. I can do it other ways. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It's just a great way to do it. I'm a big fan.
Do you think that nonsense is part of nonsense and chaos? Like chaos, part of it, like the nonsense. Like this is beyond, this is an ontological claim, right? Like the sign in which fluctuate intensity culminate in signification because it exists through. This is kind of like a not a structure. It's beyond. I don't know about structuralism, but this is kind of like the the production of sense, I guess, right? These intensities. Is there a relation between the production of sense and these intensities, right? So, in terms of the manifest, yeah.
So here's the thing. Logica Sense has a fatal flaw as a book. And I say this as someone who I love that book. But if you don't go in knowing it's a fatal flaw, it's based on Lacanian psychoanalysis. It straight up is Deleuze doing his best to pull everything out of Lacan he can to make sure there's no signification at the base level. He fails when he gets to his chapter on the body without organs, and he moves on beyond that, and he gets into the heroes and myths and all of this. It starts to fall apart. It becomes more troublesome. significantly more troublesome, and it becomes a lot more based on a teleological or a tautological setup. And he's sort of spoke of this, and now these are the things that made thank God he did it, because Guattari went, oh yeah, that's what's wrong, and here I can solve that for you, by the way. And he went, oh shit. And that's
because Brooks the definition of body without organ in logic of sense is different from anti-Oedipus.
Well,
really different.
It isn't, but we can have that discussion another time. It's different in the sense of there's a few things, but again, its place in the production of sense is not different. But you have to understand, again, it's not dealing with things in the same ontological register. It works differently there. And again, this is where you start getting into like the genealogy over time of the idea. Organelles asks, what chapter does he get into it? 7 and 8, if I had to say. But probably all of section 3. Chapter 9, 7, 8, and 9. Section 3. I pulled up the PDF. I mean, it's obvious. Chapter 9 is chaos, mental illness, and the plane of immanence. But he starts in 7 because it's about the cracks of life. And it's specifically about how in philosophy, where, again, chaos is central to Deleuze and Guattari's work. But it's like how chaos works within the 3 great disciplines. That's what he's talking about, how it works within philosophy, science, and art. And how we extract consistency from it. And it's really incredible. I got to tell you, I really, really, really love Lapoujade's work. Yes, Logic of Sense. If you can find, just to mention, Logic of Sense by Gilles Deleuze. If you can find the Penguin edition, it has 2 extra addendums, essays. Find that version, especially if you're buying. Do not buy it without it. The 2 extra essays, one of them is one of the most important essays that's going to be important for you if you're joining this reading, is Deleuze's reading of Klossowski's Simulacra through Baphomet. It is so fucking important to understanding the rest of this book Klossowski's writing, because it's about what Klossowski writes in this book and Deleuze analyzing it, which is awesome. So find that. And with it, I encourage parroting. I don't give a fuck. If you can't afford to buy it, please do, because Mehdi, Mehdi, Parsa, Parsa, is one of the most amazing Deleuze scholars I haven't seen people talk about. And he wrote a companion piece to Logic of Sense that is unfucking real. Like, it's hard to even talk about, because like I'm a big fan of like Holland's companion to Anti-Oedipus, which mostly like is revisiting concepts from it. Parsa's work on Logic of Sense is almost like an analytic take on Logic of Sense, where it's like, here's what Deleuze says, here's this, and it's like bit by bit with everything. It's fucking crazy, and it's basically spot on throughout it. And he even talks about where, like, he doesn't say it like I do, like, well, Deleuze fucked up here, but he kind of talks about, like, he would later go on to say, like, I think that's how he phrases it. Deleuze would later go on to say that this wasn't quite correct, I think is how he phrases stuff like that. Much more polite than I am. Mehdi Parsa. You know what? I'll be putting it in the Discord. This is one of my favorites. This is probably, if I could someday, I pretend that I will end up being a fucking person who writes anything. This is, if I had to write a fucking secondary text, it would be like copying the format of this. It's so easy to like make your way through. It's so easy to work with. It doesn't fuck around. It doesn't miss things. It hits every note, and it does it in a way that's just fucking amazing. It's so good. Yeah, I think he uses potentially mistaken. Like Parsa's really, really very polite. Very polite. But it's that's sadly not something I'm blessed with. Let's see. We'll go to because he just nails everything. Just to read from that, because I think it matters. Again, this isn't intended, you're not supposed to understand what I'm saying if you're not into this, but it's really incredible because he's talking here specifically about Alice, but he's talking about it in the sense of Chronos versus Aeon. The way that the god of Chronos, the good sense, good Chronos, the how does things make sense? What is the meaning of life? The question, how does life make sense, is its philosophical alternative. The plurality of senses is inherent to philosophy and what distinguishes it from religion. There are, of course, religious philosophies and logics, the philosophies of good sense, the logic of signification, philosophical religions, the religions of sense. What is important is affirming an image of thought, which corresponds to the plurality of senses and the positive power of paradoxes, and building philosophy and logic on this basis. That alone is so fucking amazing. It's so good. That's his analysis of Logic of Sense Series 1. It's phenomenal. The paradoxical nature of sense renders its plurality to be in the form of bidirectionality. Thus, the plurality here is not that of established beings, but rather a genetic multiplicity, as Deleuze, in reference to Riemann and Bergson, calls it qualitative and continuous multiplicity, whose site is not space, but rather duration or time, as in Bergsonism. The bidirectionality underlies also the inherent plurality of the event, which has no place in space, but is essentially in time. As Zorbachevelli states, another great thinker, by the way, there is no event except in plural. The event is always at least two. At any time and any space, Alice is small or large. But in becoming large, she can see herself becoming small. Her feet, for example. What is herself? Thus, the evental bidirectionality of sense stands against the monodirectionality of good sense. Good sense defines the one-directional spatial time that goes from past to future, stands against the differentials of duration. There are, on the other hand, quantitative or discrete multiplicities in space, which are indeed already constituted multiplicities, and, on the other hand, qualitative multiplicities, which are becoming multiple. This mixture of becoming and multiplicity radically alters the philosophical understanding of movement, which is traditionally understood as tracking a trajectory, changing the spatial position whose number defines time. Deleuze, through Bergson, provides an understanding of movement, which is not in terms of static entities. Constantine Boundus explains this Deleuzian account as following, quote, "Movement affects both space and bodies moving through it. To move is not to go through a trajectory which can be decomposed and recombined in quantitative terms. It is to become other than itself, in a sense that makes movement a qualitative change." In short, it is wrong to understand movement in terms of space. It must be understood in terms of time. Hence, movement amounts to the qualitative change. This view unpacks the ancient paradoxes of movement and time. Zeno's famous paradox indicates the paradoxical nature of spatial images of time. Boundus maintains, Deleuze reminds us that it was Zeno who showed that the arrow will not fly if it has to pass first, one by one, all the discrete points at the discrete times of an extended manifold. It will not fly because movement cannot be reconstituted on a basis of instance any more than being can be constituted on a basis of presence. That's just awesome. Lance, this is how good this is. It's hard to even describe how much I fucking adore this entire book. I can't tell you how much I love this book. It's the Logic of Sense is not an easy read. It is complicated. It's one of his easier books. Empiricism and Subjectivity. I've joined in Ben's refrain that that's probably the best place to start if you're ever wanting to. But Logic of Sense is solid. But this just unpacks and shifts where it's like, yes, Deleuze is saying movement. I moved through space. The fuck does that even mean? You moved from here to here? But it can't be it can't be reduced to just that thing. We misunderstand time. We misunderstand things if we do this, which is straight Bergson, by the way. Straight fucking Bergson. Straight fucking Bergson. It's great. Oh, shit. I need to stop. I will not fucking quit, and I need to because I've got a whole bunch of shit I need to get to. I hope all of you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, generally speaking, if you do generally enjoy what I do, of course, super chats and memberships here are great. We don't do any paywalls for content. We don't believe in it as a thing. I just generally don't believe in it as a thing. Not to knock those who do. It's just not a thing QC's for. We exist to get everything out and continue to do that over and over and over. So, please, any support's lovely. That's great. Better way to support is by actually joining us. Discord.gg/DGQC, and you can actually just grab whatever the fuck is happening and you can go, hey, let's take a look, Brooks. What's happening here? What's going on? Oh, you're wrong. You're stupid. And you can tell me all of those fun things that are just a riot. You can tell me why I'm wrong. Generally speaking, people will tell you why that's easy to do and we don't mind it too much. I have no idea where I'm going to send you today because no one's live that I give a shit about. And it's been a really wild couple days as we learn that the president is absolutely a kid fucker. I mean, we knew he kind of was, but like Epstein saying he spent hours at Epstein's house with Giuffre. Wait, why would he spend hours at Epstein's house with a sex assault victim? Except, am I wrong? Anyone? No, I don't understand it. Yeah, I don't know. It's wild. But I want to thank all of you. The best way, I should fucking finish my thing so I can get out of here. Best way to support us is patreon.com/DGQC. Best chance of every dollar going to me and a cup of coffee a month makes stability a thing because the stability of funding, like the foam on a wave, would be great. When did you start learning all of this? That Trump fucks kids? I mean, we've known for a long time. He used to brag about, I think the moment I knew it is when he was talking about in his 50s how proud he was to walk in on Miss Teen USA pageants as the girls were undressing publicly. So that kind of is all
which mean the conservatives are the same thing. Who defend them?
Yeah, I mean, you protect a pedophile at that level. Yeah. It's not a shock. Not a shock. Not a shock at all. What a nightmare. I'm your foam. I'll be your foam, Meshuggah, and I'll be all of your foam, and you should be each other's foam. Join the QC. It's the best way to do that. Otherwise, we will talk later and be watching. We're doing a full episode tomorrow, which I'm pretty excited about, so that should be fun. And may do a surprise stream later tonight, maybe this weekend. I'm trying to get the Kintsugi process going. It is a lot more work offline than I was ready for, but I've got a couple of books I do want to talk about. My physical copy of Oriental Despotism finally came in, and it's very different. Oh, you meant with philosophy shit. When did I start with this? In high school, I was a white, middle-ish class suburban kid in 45 minutes outside of, 25 minutes outside of Denver, Colorado, in Littleton, which is a pretty famous, really exactly what you expect, Brady Bunch suburb. And I was into Ayn Rand and philosophy, putting that in big fucking quotes. And then I had a high school teacher who taught one semester of philosophy. They made him get rid of it because it was atheist, it turned out. And he actually taught me about Plato, Aristotle, and Kant, which is not a thing most people have experience in high school. I got Mr. Kreitzer. I will forever fucking be indebted to that. I was a dick to him because I was a dick in general. Oh yeah, no, I was into Ayn Rand. Oh no, I was a fucking shit. I was in high school. I was a fucking teenager. I was a dumbass. But he introduced me to real philosophy, and I was a dick, but he would be able to like challenge me on stuff that I couldn't answer, because one of the ways that Ayn Rand works for people is because it answers questions in very specific ways that actually don't have anything to do with the philosopher she's critiquing. She hated Kant, had nothing to do with fucking Kant. Didn't understand Kant in any meaningful sense whatsoever. And Plato and Kreitzer fucked with me. He'd put stuff out there and I'd be like, and I'd say some smart ass thing, but internally I would feel really fucking embarrassed. And that pushed me to like, okay. And then he introduced me to Taoism, which, by the way, in that area, that's what got the class canceled. As China, no, bad. Even in the 90s. But that sent me down a very different route. And I started reading Taoism, got into Buddhism, Zen, and then started actually reading Plato, which got me reading a couple others. And eventually I worked my way to Lacan and Zizek in my mid-20s. And then got super into Zizek, and then Deleuze in my early 30s, I started reading a little bit more of, but I didn't have any formal training. Like I was like an autodidact, wasn't proud of it, but I did what I could. And then I made my way, at this point, I am indebted to every single person who's a member of the Quarantine Collective. Because prior to this, you can go listen. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Music. Our first run of the Anti-Oedipus reading. We'll just say I didn't really know my stuff. I didn't really understand what I was talking about. But what made it work is that I was open to that. I don't mind being an idiot. I don't mind people laughing at me. I enjoy cringe humor. I kind of put myself in positions I probably shouldn't because I enjoy being the butt of a joke. I like that. And so it was really fun, actually, to have all these really smart people tell me where I was fucking wrong. And I have 20 years of Zizek under my belt. More than 20 years, I think, at this point. But yeah, I've read everything he wrote prior to like 4 years ago. I can't stand him anymore. His old stuff I still like. I can't stand his new stuff. But where we ended up is me saying some dumb shit and being corrected. And we had enough people correcting me that I'd go, oh, and then they'd explain, and we'd spend hours. Like our early recordings, like it's insane. We would spend 6, 7, 8 hours on little parts and people explaining and telling me what to go read. And it was amazing. It was one of the more extraordinary experiences I've ever been able to be a part of. And I'm incredibly blessed that I was able to do that. And so, because I finished the first one, I was like, well, fuck, I kind of understand this book now. I want to start a second. So we started the second one. And as we got halfway through, I'm like, holy fuck, I actually am learning. And other people started telling me I'm learning. And I'm like, well, fuck. So now I'm here and we just keep doing this. And we just see as people learn. It's Deleuze. I would say I didn't understand Deleuze until 2022. And even then, I would say about 2 years ago is when it finally really clicked. It's weird. It's really tough. The internet needs stuff like this to counter all the garbage. I have a theory of where everything's going, content-wise. I think most content, like, do you remember that you used to be able to find content that was good? And when I say that, I'm not talking to Gen Z. You people didn't exist. You don't count. I'm talking about like 2012-ish, 2010 to 2012. If you wanted to know something, actually looking it up online was reliable. And I don't mean reliable in the sense of like, oh, I know the truth and you don't, but like it would point you to real sources, people who cared about things, blogs about X, Y, and Z, some nerd who knows their shit, and they would go in deep. It was amazing. And on YouTube, you'd have really amazing content of people like trying to explain stuff or talking about things they cared about, or, you know, even if it was just a book or a movie, there wasn't baiting. There wasn't that yet. There wasn't the algo. You could just make content. And when you do that and it switches over, when people started doing things for the algo, like there's this thing that I think it was like 2017 is when I think this really kicked into overdrive, where like the cynicism about it shifted to most videos, or at least you stopped being able to tell whether or not it was made genuinely. There's a lot of videos that started getting made then, and it's basically, you know, we'll get to what AI's done, but it started getting made to get clicks. So like someone, look at this yelling at person at fucking Dairy Queen. And it's like, oh, this is staged. Why were you recording? You're fucking staging a hate video. But that is like the worst version of the basic thing, which is, let me tell you about Nietzsche and why he thinks we all should die. That's a fucking exciting goddamn title for a video. There you go. So the algorithm and attention systems pushing towards this content, making it repeatable. And that's why there's a billion Nietzsche videos that are all the same. Before AI, there were Essential Salts in his fucking thing, Abigail, all these people, the most boring fuck takes. They don't read interesting books. They don't care about any of these things. They probably overinvest into their own shit. They don't deal with other people. They don't have people who tell them they're wrong. They just fucking go. You end up in a place where like it eats itself. And now there's this glut. Oh, that's what did well? I'll do a video like that. And say you end up, and I'm going to talk about with Sunday tomorrow, there's this Sydney Sweeney trend this last week. Sydney Sweeney, who it turns out is like a white nationalist. I'm shocked. A blonde, pretty girl. But like her film didn't do good. And so everyone's like, go anti-woke, go broke. See, it's proof that conservatives, it's like, you're doing the same thing. You're just rage baiting. That's all this is. It's all rage baiting. It's not real content. It's not real meaningful content. It's reacting to an algorithm and bending that way. AI is just the perfect version of it. It just makes it so all of these, you know, Lorenz videos and Abigail and Michael, it just means that anyone can make those videos. It's really not hard. Like, it's super not hard. Use Claude, spend about 5-6 minutes. It'll shit you out a fucking script that you will not be able to tell from that, and it will probably be better than theirs, to be perfectly frank. If you know the right things to ask, it's crazy. It's crazy what it can do. It won't be right. It won't be interesting, but it'll be that, but it bends that way. And that's all AI is going to do. So Gen Z is coming to the internet, and you're used to already living in bait land, where thumbnails are bait, videos are bait. They probably didn't even happen, but does it even matter if they happened? They're still entertaining. I don't know. Is that a real dog? Did they train the dog to do that? Do they actually hit the dog? Is that car actually in an accident? I don't know. Is it CG? Blah, blah, blah. It's all whatever. You lived in that, and now AI is here, and I can't tell the difference anymore. I sent my brother a video that I thought was hilarious, and he thought was funny. And then I saw a note that was like, this is AI, and they showed proof of it. I was like, that's it. That's it for me. I have a very good radar. It's over. You're fucked. You're all fucked. You do not have a better radar than me. I don't give a shit. I do not give a fuck. It's effectively done. Even if you're perfect, it doesn't fucking matter. So at this point, AI is at that level. It's just a matter of getting costs down. It's a matter of broadening it out. It's a matter of how you use tools and people learning to manipulate that. And then what? Well, this content, you're not going to be able to do. What I do, you cannot do. AI has never had a novel idea. It doesn't work that way. That's not how it functions. LLMs are not possible. That's not how it works. It's bending normative, always bending normative. The more you use it, the more normative. So like, good luck, but at best you'll have a really weird reading of Nietzsche, which makes no sense, but you won't have a good reading. It'll be fine. So this won't be able to happen. And I think there is, just as there is on most platforms, as dead internet takes over, which it is, and I'm glad, it's going to shift to what people consider that people will be able to recognize very quickly, and they're starting to, the signs of AI, the jilted, basic, simplistic writing that doesn't feel natural. There's a vibe, or that it's not pushing them. Most people don't care. Fuck them. I don't exist for their content. They're never going to be here. I know the content I make. When I cross 100 viewers, I'm fucking floored that exists at one time for me. I am not expecting, like, one of my videos, my video on AI, which is the broadest video I've done, I think is crossed, where are we at now? Let me actually check, because it's my best video, and it's like, okay, cool, let's check. Videos by views. It's about to cross, it's a philosophy tube is about to cross 70,000 views, and the AI video is crossing 50,000 views. And that's way more than I thought I would ever get on any of these things. Period. The philosophy tube one, it's only because she's in it and people hate that bitch. So what are you going to fucking do? The third best I've got is Michael. And then people hate that dick and they just like drama. So what I do is not for everyone. This content, that stuff, the Michael, Abigail, all that, it'll be able to be automated, but there will be so much of it, no one will survive. That's the beauty. You get it, right? That's the beauty. Philosophy Tube was the first. She was able to call herself Philosophy Tube. It wasn't Philosophy Tube. Oh, it's a section of YouTube that does philosophy. She got to call herself Philosophy Tube long ago. And she's shit. But because she was new at it, to her credit, she was doing a new thing. She was trying something no one else was really trying. And good for her. But she's shit. But shit got to go to the front of the line. That's how it works, because it's not about how good she was. It's that she was doing something unique. Most of these people got that way. My buddy Michael Swaim, he's one of the guys who helped build crack.com. He basically invented the format of video lists that he talks about and does silly voices and shows video clips. If you don't realize, he was doing it when it was Google Video he was uploading to for crack.com. When it was Google Video. Okay? It's been a few years. And he was very good at it. That's great. But it was new. It was exciting. When that stops being novel, when it's other people start saying, oh, you can do this. College Humor gets big. Funny or Die gets big. And then 10,000 other channels of 4 or 5 shitheads who make kind of jokes. The glut of content forces everyone down. It crushes it. This is how entertainment works. Hey, look, I invented dubstep. Now everything's dubstep. And it crushes down. So no one makes money. And so everyone moves on. That's what all of this is going to be. That's what all of this is going to be. That's what all of this is going to be. So I'm ready for that, because AI ain't going to do this. I'm going to stick out like a sore fucking thumb. Sunday is going to stick out like a sore fucking thumb. Fucking people like, even drama people like Queeman will stick out like a sore thumb, because that kind of content, that weird, unique shittiness or oddness of people who are weird in their own way, they're going to do stuff. They're going to stand out because it's not for the algo. That's not like the top ranking thing. It's in there, but it's not the top ranking thing. It's not black-pilled. This is hopeful. AI is going to destroy all the shit. Because as soon as it's commodified, as soon as I can basically run Claude on my phone, which if you haven't used one of the more recent smaller models on a small device, we're not wildly far away from. It's within the next couple of years. And everyone has access to this like shitty version of it. What's going to happen? It's going to fill with content everywhere. But not mine. No one can do this. It's fine. God, I don't care. Go do your LLM shit. That's fine. It'll ruin everyone else. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm excited. It's going to be really interesting. Oh, It may not be real people. I don't know. I have no idea what's coming next, but I know they can't do this. And people who are watching, they thrive on knowing that that person hurts, feels, has a life outside of the channel, or that they respond, that there is an internal something. That's all they want. They want to know that, like them, you don't turn off when the stream turns off. That there's complexity and they don't know what to expect tomorrow. And LLMs, you know what to expect. You always know what to expect. It's going to be really interesting.
Embrace the chaos.
I believe in it. I believe in it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But with that, I'm going to say it has been real. It has been lovely. I love all of you people. You're fantastic in every single way. And you are the highlight of my week. And I will see you all soon enough.